Hey there. All right, I'm back. So I renamed this stream Apple Fritters and the Apocalypse because where I live in all the elementary schools, it's time for pastries with parents or dads and donuts. I saw one that said muffins with our military. So I thought, oh nice. I just ate a delicious, huge apple fritter myself. And everybody's talking about all the craziness in the world. So I thought that was kind of funny. I've been thinking about the War of the Worlds. And somewhat recently, there was that CBS program about Jack Parsons called Strange Angel. And it's set in the time period where in 1938, Orson Welles did the radio performance of War of the Worlds, and everybody freaked out and thought it was a real alien invasion. But that was originally a story from 1897 by H.G. Wells. So I thought that was interesting that Orson Welles and H.G. Wells, they're not actually related by blood, as far as anyone seems to report. But I do remember the film from 2005 by Spielberg. So it's interesting to think now. I've been listening lately to The Dark Journalist, and I'd never really listened to him before. But as he would say, I find him fascinating. These different subjects, and there was that 1987 speech at the UN where Reagan famously said something to the effect of, united by the common threat. And a Dark Journalist the other day was saying that Reagan, in all seriousness, looked to Gorbachev and said, yeah, you would help us, right? And he was dead serious. And after Reagan died, I think Gorbachev told that story. Anyway, I just thought that was really interesting because, there's all this talk about aliens, and it's like, I don't know. I get just very surface level into all these conspiracy stuff, and I just think, we're never gonna know. There's too much to sort through. My brain can't track it all, and I just, move on. But I think it is interesting when it just comes to your mind again when you have these thoughts. It's like, oh, okay, let me give it another chance and let me look at it again. And so I want to find the text for War of the Worlds from 1897. I've been reading a lot of older literature, some Mark Twain stuff from the mid 1800s, and apparently there's a Hemingway connection to this dark zone area in around Florida and in the Atlantic. And my mom had this really cool watercolor painting of the Hemingway house and the southernmost point in Florida, the Keys, I believe. So I was always fascinated by these authors in the United States from the mid 1800s. And so I want to read War of the Worlds, and I want to kind of just dig into that story again. I remember the book. I'm sure it's had a lot of different adaptations over the years besides just the Spielberg one. But, it does make me think about how maybe it's not so crazy to think that we're controlled by all these stories. There's something about the stories themselves that make them come back again and again and again. It might not be some plot per se, but there's something about the past that kind of, I think of it like a plant in the garden, like when it blooms and it makes you pay attention to it. And it's like that plant is like yelling at you. It's saying, hey, I want to get your attention. Look at me, look at me. And there's been so much talk about narcissism and everything like that. And I'm sure people would say that about me. No doubt. Because here I am, just rambling. But, whatever. Like, I think there's some truth to however people judge another thing, like from their perspective, that shouldn't necessarily affect me, though. Yeah, CJ. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, I feel like I'm not trying to scream that that's going to happen, but it's just like, oh, it would make sense. And like, that wasn't even really my idea because the Dark Journalist show I was listening to, they were talking about this, But I just thought, wow, that sounds pretty plausible, actually. And I guess I should just say I'm at the point where I really don't trust anything anymore, but I have to hold some place that any of it might be true, because the things that you find out about, sometimes they're so crazy, and so we just have to be open to like the craziness being possible, just not necessarily going so far as to like shout and scream that everything is definitely going to happen, but I don't um I don't really care if people are going to judge me. They are, and thankfully those that will listen, like, yeah, it's awesome having CJ in the chat, because I think that setting the stage is really important. I think there's something to just all these stories coming into our purview. Because, like, of course, besides War of the Worlds, my generation had, we had Armageddon, where they land on the asteroid. That was in like 1998-ish. And then, of course, Independence Day. And the hilarious Aliens Attack, Mars Attacks. I need to watch that again. That's ridiculous and so funny. But yeah, they set the stage in different ways. They kind of give everybody all these different platforms. Yeah, the 2005 War of the Worlds, that was big. I mean, they have like these big name stars in these kinds of movies. And I don't know. I mean, I'm not trying to play up um all this crap. There's some channels that are just so hard to take. But I try and watch them anyways because um again, I'm just really trying to gather like where people are at. And I think Emily Moyer said it in a show of hers I was watching that it's like it's to her benefit to understand where other people are at, because then she kind of knows how to approach something and how to not have such high expectation. And the way she articulated it, I think I've tried to. um but yeah, that's really similar to how I feel, because um I'm not trying to be some Pollyanna, too naive and just, yeah, everything is going to be fine, and ignore the obvious truths. Um, but I'm just not sure that the screaming and shouting, and being so pushy helps either. And as a parent, I'm really struggling with that balance too, because I want my kids to be able to be open and honest with me, but when I know they're lying, I don't want to berate them so much that they get conditioned to just want to keep lying. I also don't want to be too lax. And so with politics, with business, um just with the thousands of years of complexity of our history, um it's just very dangerous for us to reduce things down. um and that's what I'm working on, because I know so little. So obviously the things I'm going to say are going to sound reductive, um are going to um expose my lack of knowledge. But like it's all a journey, it's all a process. And so I'm really grateful for the time that I've been able to live in and for the life that I've been able to have. And that's why I share it, because um you don't always know the impact of an experience you've had until after years down the road. Maybe you recognize, like, oh, okay, like maybe that's where I got some of my idealistic my ideas was from this book that everyone was reading um back in kindergarten, you know. um those things really stick with you. And so I think it's interesting to look back on it with a new lens. I mean, in some ways a lot of these stories are ruined, but to move past that, you can look at it as an opportunity to kind of dissect, um, okay, how are these narratives changed, um, to become more contemporary? And does any of it stick? You know, for my kids, it's really hard to get them to watch some stuff. Um, but like The Simpsons, my daughter crushed that whole series. She watched the whole thing. And she's still pretty young, and so I was kind of like, "Oh, dang, I didn't really expect that she would get into something like that." But now it's really funny because something there'll be some reference to something that happened historically, and she will have context for it because it was referenced in The Simpsons. So is that good? I don't know. It's a little embarrassing, but it's interesting. It's fascinating to see how the brain collects information, how we can recall it. And it's really hard to understand history without context. Similarly, I imagine to how hard it is to learn language when you're not immersed in it. That's why you have to get trained on the job. You have to learn most things by immersion, by doing it. So this new era of small little groups where we're all looking at the world through our own lenses, and I have a great number of friends, the ones that still will communicate with me, that always keep me up to date with what they're interested in and what they're following and what they're thinking about. And I appreciate that so much because some of it's just out of my, just I'm not able to pay attention to it because there's so many other things that are out there to try and track. So, sometimes I like to watch those watch parties like Sebs and CJ did today. And unfortunately, there were a lot of interruptions with like just the internet was slow and stuff like that. But it was still worth, I think, the time spent because I was able to work around the house and get a take of someone else's perspectives and be reminded of like, oh yeah, okay, I really don't want to be ragging on everything all the time. But it is important not to just accept things as they are presented, and that's the loyal opposition. That's the comedian. That's our job, is to poke fun at the king, So I think that's an important job, and we're not going to be intimidated to shut up. There's too many of us snarky assholes out there, and all it does, all the censorship does, and, you push things underground, you almost make it worse. You get people more riled up, more pissed off. And I think that's what that whole amnesty thing was all about. It makes sense that the amnesty article was intended to just gauge how riled up people are going to get. And I think they don't even care who goes to vote. Sorry. They don't care who wins elections anymore. They just want people to continue to believe that they're legitimate at all, because they can do, I'm sure, a myriad of things to get who they want into power. But yeah, I have a sneaking suspicion that, yeah, that's the new way they have to do the October surprise, because there's early voting and all that. And you have like 3 or 4 weeks with your ballots if you have a mail-in ballot. And they can't just drop something right the day before election day anymore. And so they have to bombard people with 25 crazy ass things that have happened in the last week. And it's like, I'm just not buying it anymore. I wanted to believe in this stuff for so long. And I'm just, for right now, I'm just going to opt out. I want to just see what happens. I want to be the observer, and I want to have a few of us that we can chat with about this stuff. But I really don't want to actually engage too much. So I don't know if that's right or not. But I think, yeah, just the more that I can study, the more that I can actually physically be here for my kids when they need me. That I think that really is superior to anything else. Any ambition, and I'm really going to try to do my best to have like integrity with what I do. So I'm going to continue having just these conversations, just saying like, hey, this is what I'm thinking about. But yeah, I'm definitely confused. I am definitely taking everything not at face value, but just to consider. So I feel really fortunate that I'm comfortable enough in my own skin, like how I could go eat at a restaurant by myself, or I would have no problem. Bad feedback. Too bad. Well, that must mean it's time to sign out. Have a good night.